Since like the dawn of time, beauty has taken on an array of meanings, sometimes operating in coherence with itself and sometimes in contradiction. Peacocks have bright feathers and colors as a sort of beauty to attract a mate. Butterflies have patterns on their wings to both attract a mate and to warn off predators. Of course, beauty is a dynamic human concept, and to apply it to simpler animals is kind of at best an inaccurate representation and at worst an inaccurate projection. But I only mean to say the idea of looking a certain way and being perceived a certain way isn't new. It's actually evolutionarily inherent in all of us. But humans have the very cute, sometimes nasty habit of extruding a simple reality and implanting it into a cosmos of confusion, consumption, and overcorrection. I wanted to talk a little bit about what beauty has come to mean today, if it has any chance of returning to its simplest form, if there is a simplest form, should it, can it, etc., etc. Let's discuss beauty as a pursuit, as an evil, as something else entirely. Let's get into it. So I wanted to start by talking about my credentials a little bit. I was the ugly duckling growing up. Like, my next door neighbor was hot and pretty and my age, and I did not give a flying fuck about the way that I looked until genuinely 12th grade. And because I was blind to the ridicule, if there was any, it was during the stage of my life that I was utterly at peace. I don't even know if I was conscious. I just remember being so zen with everything. Being perceived wasn't on my radar. Of course, I would dream about falling in love and blah, 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 but to me, at that stage in my life, that had nothing to do with the way that I looked. Nothing. Until I went to college, realized I had never kissed a boy, and decided to take matters into my own hands. To me, buying into beauty and making myself beautiful was the death of an era and the start of a different sort of era, the start of a subscription that I don't think I could have necessarily ever opted out of once I had started. Much like people sometimes comment on the addictive nature of plastic surgery, I think once your identity shifts from being a person to being a beautiful person, there's something about that that kind of changes your internal mechanisms and internal workings. It just leaves a lasting effect on your operation. And sometimes we go to war with ourselves. How do you preserve a real human authenticity if you're changing yourself bit by bit, constantly, minusculely, all the time, if you start fine-tuning your frequencies to perception instead of reflection? If anybody's ever read the story The Velveteen Rabbit, it is a children's story, it's super good, and about this stuffed bunny who really wants to become real, and there's a character called Skin Horse, and he says, let me see, he tells our Velveteen Rabbit, "You become. It takes a long time, that's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily, or have sharp edges, or have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off, your eyes drop out, and you get loose in your joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to the people who don't understand." So here there's a reframing of beauty as a sort of restrictive social program that directly impedes our pursuit of authenticity. It stunts, basically. Not only that, but real human beauty is achieved through a rejection of man-made beauty, ironically. They operate in different spheres and speak different languages. A couple weeks ago, I read this essay on Substack by this writer, Paris Mwenwa, I think. It's called Beauty is Useless, and her final paragraph was literally intoxicating. Let me read it. She says, "I encourage you to be the worst thing a girl can be, ugly. Watch the way the world glosses over you. Find how everyone gawks when you leave the competition. But see what you find? The time to construct a soul within yourself. You will feel your heart beating in your chest and realize you've become the scariest thing a girl can be. Whole." I was gagged. That's gonna get stuck under my fingernails for the rest of my life, for sure. It was wholeheartedly striking and invigorating, and it filled me with a sort of revolutionary zealousness. I was angry. I was really angry. And then I was thinking, wow, this is why some women, especially those who have been considered beautiful for much of their lives, sometimes snap and shave their heads completely bald. It's like, after having had enough, they're taking themselves out of the arena entirely. But after reflecting on the essay a little bit more, the namesake of Paris's essay is something that I found a little bit contentious. Beauty is useless. If there's anything we know from the way that the Western world operates today, is that, especially from those who rise to fame, for women, beauty is power. And for many, many years, for centuries upon centuries, beauty was the only currency of power that a woman was allowed to wield. And even that, it was supposed to be done with a sort of pseudo-naivete and cluelessness, to not even hint at intention or sentience. I don't even know. So we reclaimed our beauty, right? And we wore it loudly. And soon, I worry, it became the loudest thing about us. This is slightly tangential. I didn't plan to talk about this, but recently Sabrina Carpenter came out with her newest album cover. I think it's going to be, the title of the album is Man Child. And there's a lot of discourse around the front album cover, and I think it's actually pretty applicable to what I'm talking about. Let me find my phone. Okay, hopefully I'll put it on my screen here, but there was a comment under one of the videos in critique of Sabrina's new album cover, and one of the comments under that video was, this might be a quote from somewhere, but I don't know. It quotes, "Empowered subjugation, where a woman appears to reclaim objectification by choosing it, but instead only reinforces the structures that she claims to resist. It appeals to the male gaze under the guise of critiquing it, so that ambiguity is precisely what makes it so insidious. And the power she projects is surface level, it flatters patriarchal fantasy more than it disrupts it." So that last part is a little bit irrelevant to what I'm talking about today, and more contextualized to the Sabrina Carpenter debate, but I thought the first part of it was pretty accurate in the idea of reclamation, in how much does that actually help us, especially in the field of beauty, which is something so... I mean, we're trying to get into it today. Well, to denounce the construct of beauty is to wholeheartedly retract from society. It's like you're at a table with a bunch of people who do speak English and you don't. And you like hear words here and there, and you're like trying to tune in and get it, but you don't. Everything's confusing, everything's perplexing eternally, and you're just sat there, so you get up and leave, and you decide to converse with yourself, by yourself, and find company in your own head, and that's where you find some sort of understanding. Is that practical? I created this channel calling it Kindred in the hopes that I would find like-minded people, a community of gentle souls. I'm a big fan of the Anne of Green Gables books, and after being kind of odd and unusual and ugly for most of her life, Anne, she craved beauty, but she also found soul-deep friendships outside of being beautiful. And she says one of her famous quotes is, "Kindred spirits aren't so scarce as I used to think. It's splendid to find out that there are so many of them in the world." They may be a quieter bunch, but they are there. And if your pursuit of authenticity seems to be playing out at odds with your pursuit of commercial beauty, I think our best bet might be to find solace in those of similar mind. Okay, I'm moving on to lips. But the next thing that I wanted to talk about is aesthetics, because that's a complete different field of beauty that has a lot to do with the concept of beauty, but it somehow is lost in translation with the modern day practice of beauty. So let's seek to marry those ideas a little bit. So what of aesthetics? There's architecture and art and poetry and things that seek to evoke a strong sense of aesthetic beauty. What about that? Don't we as humans crave a certain degree of symmetry, geometry, proportion, form, a sort of biologic component to beauty? And we can definitely explore this route through the lens of like instinct and primal behavior and the more biology, but I think a human's unique ability to reason kind of provides a different lens through the intersection of truth and beauty. In Western philosophy, Plato has this idea that your soul, kind of immaterial and eternal, has access to these eternal truths. I read this article by Patrick Webb. I will link it below. I'll link all my resources below. I think I wrote it down. He paraphrases the relationship that Plato thinks of with beauty and truth as, whereas truth instructs the soul about the good, capital good, beauty motivates the soul towards it. And Aristotle, although he had some divergences in Plato's teachings and his metaphysics, he also places beauty with some degree of relation to virtue. He characterizes beauty from the same article as the unmoved mover, the final cause of all things that is desired for its own sake and sets the entire cosmos in motion by the attraction it exercises. I was like, damn, just how like the physical world is governed by a magnetic field, such is the eternal, immortal, good world by beauty. I'm definitely jumping around in my makeup, and I do that regularly. I'm sorry if that bothers anyone. It's actually the Cynic Hellenistic perspective that kind of ties back to our earlier discourse. From the same article I found, the Cynics thought that social convention tends to hinder the good life, compromising freedom and setting up norms of conduct that are opposed to nature and reason. They asserted that a natural form of conduct and the way we behave kind of exists, and society as a construct is a hindrance to that rather than a harmonizer. Perhaps beauty is not something that's like external to us, but a piece of the soul that is watered like a flower. I want to bring up the myth of Sisyphus, which is a written work by Albert Camus. I haven't actually read it yet, but it kind of came up when I was doing my research about beauty. And I really don't trust that AI blurb that comes up when you search something anymore. It used to be Wikipedia, but now it's like an AI bot. So I went to a reputable source instead. Captain Lighthouse on Reddit summarizes The Myth of Sisyphus as a 1942 philosophical essay by Albert Camus, and it discusses how, through a chapter from Greek mythology, we can find beauty in everything. Camus claims that when Sisyphus acknowledges the futility of his task and the certainty of his fate, he is freed to realize the absurdity of his situation and to reach a state of contented acceptance. Similarly, when we realize the absurdity of existence, we are freed and our focus shifts on the beauty of the mundane. So this is a different kind of beauty, and it does tie into different existential themes, but it is the kind of beauty that deals with romanticism, romantic notion, and all things love. This is the kind of beauty that, this is my opinion, that I think we can chase, possess, and ultimately kind of coerce into becoming a pillar of our identity. Curated aesthetic, it girl, etc., etc. But the thing about this type of beauty is that it's powerful because it's everywhere. It's everything. It is so utterly pervasive that any hope of wielding it and catching it is a foolish notion. And even thinking that you have to pursue it alienates you from the fact that you already have it. If we look to Eastern philosophy, there's an idea that's deeply ingrained in most Buddhist fields of thought, but I think it exists in other Eastern philosophies, and it's called suchness, the translation from the Sanskrit word tatata. I think I'm saying that right. Suchness is often described as the appreciation of beauty that is impermanent, always changing, imperfect, and incomplete. I have an excerpt after I'm done with my mascara from the Philosophy Institute. In Eastern aesthetics, there is an understanding that reality is fleeting, ever-changing, and dynamic. Therefore, true beauty cannot be found in fixed representations of the world, but in the immediate, ever-changing nature of existence. This emphasis on spontaneity is actually seen really coolly throughout the culture. Like Zen ink painting very much encapsulates the Eastern idea of beauty as a very spontaneous thing. In Sufi philosophy, beauty is seen as a reflection of the divine, with God being referred to as al-Jamil, which literally means the beautiful. And we've all heard the sentiment that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and actually Sufi poet Rumi, he's one of my favorites, has this verse. Let me read it. Every beautiful and fair thing is made for the eye of the one who sees. Here, Rumi is teaching that beauty is there for anybody who's attuned to it. There's a reading called The Pursuit of Beauty in Sufi Mysticism, and it says, the capacity to see beauty in the world reflects the inner state of the seeker. When we see beauty in the things around us and view ourselves as a part of this vital interconnectedness between all things, our soul blossoms in a way that's pretty uncomparable to growing beauty in an isolated, empty terrarium. It's a garden, it's an ecosystem. And we give because that's what we were born to do. And we take because there's abundance. Beauty is not a limited resource here. It's the stuff of community and breath and love. Now, this thought is supremely radical in the sense that beauty has, in recent years and maybe in recent decades, has undergone a sort of commercial distortion that I don't even know how to begin to characterize. It has been repackaged, bought and sold, warped and withered so many times with so many trends. It has entered the commercial consumer market as a force to be reckoned with. And guess what? Such are the laws of supply and demand that people are way more likely to buy something when it's in limited resource, limited edition, one time only, exclusive. In other words, one person's beauty is necessarily, by this model, another person's lack. But if you have enough power, money, influence, you can accrue it, you can buy it. For me, this perspective invokes a degree of anger. I share in Paris's earlier sentiments of, like, throw the whole thing away, burn it, shred it, dance on the ruin. That idea of beauty is meant to pit women against each other. It is meant to perpetuate the patriarchy. It's a symbol of gross, gnarly overconsumption. But in the back of my mind lingers a small, glowing light, a sort of hearkening back to beauty as this binder of the cosmic and earthly. How can we denounce something that is as old as time, as true in truth, and as pervasive as the soil that we walk on? I feel like I have no choice but to step away from the gun and instead rely on rehabilitation and rebirth. There exists a beauty, as it has for centuries, free from ownership and possession, and untethered by worldly limitations but built into the fabric of the world itself. We don't have it, we are it. Oh my god, and I don't mean to end this by being like, it's all about the inner beauty, but low-key, LOL, that's where all this has led me. I've been researching this for a while, and that's low-key where it's led me. I'll end here with my favorite Rumi saying, the desire to know your own soul will end all other desires. And this is me adding, follow that, and you will be beautiful. Until next time.